Welcome back, Sober Family. This is another episode of Recovery Talk brought to you by Pro Recovery Power. I hope you guys are having a great start to your weekend. It is Saturday. I am so grateful. I woke up today with all my money in my bank account and no hangover, So grateful. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're really excited. As a lot of you guys know, we are now officially a nonprofit. So that's very exciting because we can help people now on a much bigger scale. Because there's a lot of people out there that need help in regards to addiction, trauma, mental health. All this stuff is many facets to addiction, but a lot of this stuff, pretty much everything can be connected back to that. So thank you guys so much. A lot of you guys do know I am from Hawaii. I live in California, but I'm going live today with Nick Terry. Nick is actually, he lives on Maui. So really excited for this one. Always excited to talk to a fellow native, kind of, so to speak, of Hawaii. So we'll be talking, about his story. He'll be telling you guys his story and what he's doing now and everything. It's really exciting. I got to chat with him for a bit the other day, so I'm excited for this. I'm excited that, now, I created this platform for other people to spread hope and cast their net out wide. Social media, it gives us that opportunity, to reach people like that seems too far out of reach, like geographically they might be on the other side of the planet, but through social media, there's a lot of negatives and positives though, but through social media, I use it as a positive tool. I use it. So anyways, without further ado, let me get him in here and then we'll get this party started. Oh, there he is.
Oh, what's up, brother?
What's up, bro? How's it going?
Right on, bro. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You too. How's the weather over there? It's always summer.
Yeah, it's been nice. We went surfing earlier this morning. Little south swell over here. So my daughter and I got to get some waves, and it's just another beautiful day in Hawaii.
Yeah, and then where on Maui do you live?
I actually live in Kihei, so I live on the
Oh, in
South
Kia.
Shore.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
right on. I remember I
yeah.
had I think I was like, I don't know, I was in high school. I forget exactly what grade I was in, but
Okay.
went to Maui for Halloween down
Oh
Front
yeah,
Street.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Down
yeah,
Front
yeah.
Street.
Uh-huh.
Like I told my parents, oh, we're going camping down Waipio Valley, and then we all jumped on the plane. Boom, we're gone. To this day, they don't even know I did that. And I remember that was one of my worst like blackout drunks like I ever had. Like
Mm.
I don't remember like almost the whole night. I don't remember. This is back when
Yeah.
we had like the disposable cameras. You gotta take picture, wind them, and then
Yeah,
go
yeah,
get it
yeah, yeah, yeah.
developed. And
Uh-huh.
then when I got the pictures back, I was like, oh, bro, I don't remember none of this. I was
Hmm.
taking pictures of all kind of people, and it was nuts. But
Yeah, yeah. Halloween Front Street is that's an event, right? And
yeah,
when I moved to Maui in 1999.
yeah,
So I was 18 years old, and so I lived in Lahaina for the first 10 years of being over here, about actually 8 years or so, and went back and forth a couple of times. But yeah, there was a few of those Halloween Front Streets that I wish I didn't remember, if you know what I mean.
yeah, right.
Because I used to get blackout, but then I would put in some substances that would ensure that I could stay up all night
Yeah,
and remember
yeah.
things.
Yeah, I found that out later on as I got older. Like, oh, cocaine,
See,
I can stay up and drink more.
yeah,
You
right. And
know?
then, well, and the thing that was wonderful for me, well, not wonderful, but I cured my cocaine addiction overnight with crystal meth. Yeah, and
Yeah,
so that
right.
was and I only did crystal meth once, but it was for about 4 years. Yeah, so that
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
thing.
Well, right on, bro. I'm really excited about this, and I want to get like more people from Hawaii, like telling their stories, because
Yes, yes.
like I'm from the Big Island, and when I was
Yep.
back there a couple months ago, there was, all like the people in the town that they're like the elders of the town, people with influence and things like that, and they're like, man, there's no recovery, like nothing, no recovery community, no
Yeah.
meetings, no nothing. So I'm like, oh man, so now we're gonna go get Pro Recovery Power started out there,
Right.
and go from one island to the next to the next. It's a it's part of my vision that I've had. So I'm
Sure.
real excited about that. I mean, I'm excited about helping addicts, alcoholics in general, but
Yeah. Yeah.
in Hawaii, I mean, that's where I'm from. It
Sure.
just touches my heart a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
anyways, bro. So before we get started,
Hmm.
I just want to ask you. So, how long have you been sober?
So I got sober January 25th, 2014. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I'm in my eighth year of sobriety, clean and sober. Yeah. So not like the California sober that they talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I know.
Yee.
Like, hey,
uh,
God, yeah, I mean, like, I don't really want to comment on that, but
nah, nah,
if
nah, nah, nah.
you
I
want to
know.
do that, like, then,
Yeah.
oh, whatever.
Nah.
I mean, I just know I cannot do that. That's the
Yeah, yeah,
main
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can't
Hey,
forget now.
no, they
Yeah.
get that on Maui too. They get the Pakalolo sober or whatever. But and to be honest, to each their own. Yeah, to thine own self be
Yeah,
true. But yeah, for me, I like to say that I've been clean and sober for 7.5 years.
that's
Because
right.
the
That's
thing for
right.
me is that there was plenty of times when it was easier for me to get sober, right? It was a lot more challenging for me to get clean,
Hmm.
but it was impossible for me to be clean and sober at the same time. Yeah, so I
Right.
always had to have something, and so I think of it as the same. Anything that kind of alters my state of consciousness,
Right.
for me personally.
Yeah.
So because there's no chemical solution for a spiritual problem. Yeah,
That's
and that's
right.
and that's
Yeah.
and that's and that's the challenge. And so I tried, and not just substances for me. You know what I mean? I can go
Hmm.
down the destructive path with gambling, with
Uh-huh.
credit cards, or with you know relationships, toxic
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
I can do it all. So I qualify for a lot of different programs. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You too.
Yeah, and I'm an alumni of several different programs. So
Yeah.
but yeah, 7.5 years clean and
Right
sober.
on, bro. Okay, and then we kind of talked about it, but where are you from? That's the next question.
Sure. Yeah. So I was born in Eugene, Oregon,
Hmm.
and then we moved around quite a bit. So I was born in Eugene, Oregon, and then we moved up to Seattle, Washington when I was about 5 years old. And I lived in Seattle, Washington for most of my childhood and adolescent period. And I moved
Hmm.
to Maui um, again when I was 18 years old. So just what about the time I should have been graduating high school.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, right on.
Hmm.
And then we did talk about this a little bit, but the last
Yeah.
question I'll ask you before we get started is,
Hmm.
what was your choice in drink and or
Hmm.
drug?
That's a good question. Yeah. So my addiction evolved
Hmm.
over time. So I'm an equal opportunity consumer. So I
Hmm.
started out with malt liquor. So the 40 ounces. I grew up in the culture of like rap music and hip hop
Yeah.
music, and so like NWA and those guys had like the 40 ounces, Old English, St. Ides, and
Yeah.
then I started smoking weed right about the same time, and then from there I went into like acid and mushrooms, and then ecstasy, and then cocaine, and then crystal meth, and then opiates, and then benzos, and then just
Hmm.
kind of all of that together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was just kind of progressively got worse for me.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, like it wasn't a particular substance. What's funny is that I started working in a treatment program when I was just almost a year sober, and I had graduated from that program. And the lady who she was the wife of the doctor that runs the treatment program. This is over in Kona, and
Hmm.
she said to me, she was doing my file, like doing my employment paperwork, and then she pulled up my file from as I was a client, yeah, and she goes, she's from the Czech Republic. She said, Nick, I'm just wondering, Nick, this is my worst Czech accent, but she said, I noticed on the substance abuse history, you've done every drug.
Hmm.
And she looked confused. Yeah. And she goes, uh, which one did you like the most? And she was very inquisitive. And I said, I always like the next one.
Yeah.
It was always the next one for me that was going to
Yeah.
take me there or get me there. And so, yeah, so I did a little bit of everything. But, to be
Okay.
honest, like, I think the opiates, like the oxys and then the heroin for me was the thing that became an everyday thing, like to where, I mean,
Yeah.
I always drank and smoked, but it wasn't, I never felt internally that I had to have it. I
Mm-hmm.
had to
Mm-hmm.
have it. And once I introduced that into my life, I couldn't function without it. And that's how I started using other substances. It was, I had to have it all the time, every day. So,
Yeah. Okay. Right on. Sorry, bro. You were kind of going in and out a little bit. Like you're frozen right now. Can you still hear me? Uh-oh. Nick. Uh-oh. Sorry, guys. 1 second. 1 second. Hey, Nick, can you hear me? You're frozen drinking your coffee. Oh, no, they got disconnected. Okay, he'll be back real soon, guys. Thank you guys so much for your patience. Somebody asked, though, over here, what's California sober? uh, you should look it up. But, that's something I understand. If it works for other people, that's cool. It just will not work for me. Absolutely, positively. I can never safely use drugs and alcohol again. Um, okay,
hey,
there we
sorry
go.
about
He's
that.
back.
Hey,
Yeah,
the internet world. Sorry about that.
yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Chris, my friend Chris, she's from Kauai, but she lived in Washington. She just said, yeah, when we went live, the same thing happened to her too.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. It
I don't know
happens.
why. I don't know why, but sometimes when you disconnect your earphones, all of a sudden it works good. I don't know why.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I don't know, but it's good now. I can see you real clear and everything.
Okay, okay. I
Yeah,
can take, you think I should take the earphones off, you think?
like
Better?
if it starts doing that, then
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay, okay.
So okay, real quick. Okay, real quick for everybody that's here, that's watching, that will watch this. You guys know that now we're nonprofit. So I would ask if you guys would be so kind, go to our website, prorecoverypower.com. If you're on your laptop, on the bottom right hand corner, it's going to say questionnaire. And if you're on your phone, it's like a little circle with a pencil. If you click on that, there's a few questions. If you guys could answer, because that really helps us to track our progress, measure our success, and see where we can improve and in moving the vision forward. So thank you guys so much. Okay, Brad. So now, at this time, Nick, I give you the floor to tell us your story.
Okay, okay. Yeah, thank you so much, man. So, like I had mentioned earlier, I was got clean and sober January 25th, 2014. And before I get into this, I just wanted to bring in my bell. This is my bell. I
Uh-huh.
call this bell Supernova. And so I'm just gonna close my eyes real quick, take a couple deep breaths, and invite the bell. Yeah. The bell allows me to kind of get grounded, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully I can speak from my heart instead of my head, and potentially
Yeah.
reach somebody out there that's struggling, right? And so yeah, I grew up around drugs and alcohol. So my mom was she was 17 when she was pregnant with me, and then 18 when I was born, and and she's had challenges in her life with substance abuse when I was young, and my dad and her both struggled tremendously. They divorced when I was a little kid, like not even a kid, 1 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
and I was an only child. And so I grew up in the early 80s. We moved up to Seattle, and in the early 80s, as some of you may know, it was, sex, drugs, rock and roll, cocaine. My mom's boyfriends were in rock and roll bands. And so, and my mom was a waitress. And so I was a kid, and I was home alone a ton, a lot. And there was a lot of drugs and alcohol around. I think in the early 80s, like people didn't even think cocaine was bad for you. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And so, growing up, I think at that age, about 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I just remember being real confused. Yeah, like I would go to school and see other kids and see their families, and I just have my mom and then her boyfriends or whoever she was with, and then my dad wasn't around very much, and I just always didn't understand where I belonged. Yeah, so it's like there was this stuff happening at home. There was abuse. There was neglect. There was drug abuse, and there was sex. There was a lot of things happening around, and nobody ever told me, hey, we don't talk about this at
Mm-hmm.
school, right? It wasn't. Nobody really directed me on how to approach it. It was kind of an unspoken thing. We keep secrets. We don't talk about the things that you see at home. And there was things that happened, drug overdoses. There was, there was heroin addiction. There was cocaine addiction. There was crack. There was a lot of alcohol, and there was weed, right? And
Yeah.
so I think for me, it was like this feeling of being separate, different, and alone was kind of this underlying theme of my life. And one thing that I started to do at a very young age was I started to lie to people,
Mm-hmm.
right? I started to create this alternate reality, right? And so I remember we moved around a ton. I went to like 12 different schools before I got expelled from 10th grade. So I was constantly moving, putting on different masks, changing locations, changing houses. And so it was just a lot of shifting. And so when you move to a lot of different schools, you can start to make up things, right, about who you are, who your family is, right? And I was big into basketball my whole life. Like, I played ball. I just loved it. And as an only child, all you had to do is have your ball. You show up wherever, and if you got game, you're in, and you make friends that way. And that's just always what I did. And as a young kid, I remember I was like, shoot, I think I was like 6 years old. And I was telling the kids at elementary school that I went to on Bainbridge Island, that my dad was Tom Chambers, and he played for the Seattle Supersonics. Now, Tom Chambers was an all-star basketball player, and he was one of the only white dudes, yeah, right, on the team. And so I was telling these kids that, Tom Chambers is my dad, and the kids were like, no, he's not. No, he isn't. And I was like, yes, he is. He is. And I remember, back when you're in little grade school, like the kids will go to the teacher and they'll say, Nick says that Tom Chambers is his dad. And I said, yes, he is. And I told the teacher, Miss White, I said, he is. And I started crying. I said, it's my dad, and I just leaned into the lie, and I just locked into it. And so, I talk about that because a lot of people talk about when they first started drinking and using. And, one thing that stands out to me is why did I feel I was so inadequate at a young age that I had to lie about who I was? What was it about me? What was it about my family? What was it about my existence that felt so inadequate that I had to try to create this other reality? Now, young children at times, can fantasize about things or exaggerate stories. I mean, that's not uncommon. But for me, it was a consistent theme of my life that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. My first escape was television. When I was young, my mom would leave me alone. She would go to work, and she was a waitress, and then her boyfriends played in rock and roll bands, so they would be doing gigs in town, and I'd be home alone, and they'd leave me with candy, soda, and the TV. So I knew all the shows, yeah. So it would be like one show after another, and then if you stayed up late enough, you get wrestling, yeah. So it was like WWF wrestling, NWA wrestling, the next wrestling, and I'd be afraid, bro. I was at home alone, and I was afraid as a kid. I was always scared. Just separate, different, alone, and afraid is what I felt like I was. And so then drugs and alcohol just helped, man. Like this idea of feeling like I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know where I fit into this world. Drugs and alcohol made it fit. Like a little bit of weed and some alcohol. I remember drinking those 40 ounces, and it was I just felt like I had arrived. I felt like I was home.
Yeah.
And so it eased all that discomfort. And alcohol and drugs was something that worked for a long time for me. It helped me escape. If you know anything about the 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous, it's Carl Jung, who's a famous psychologist, he back in the early 1900s, if you struggled with addiction or alcoholism and you had some means, you might want to try to contact Dr. Jung, and he wrote a letter to Bill Wilson about alcohol addiction, and he said that for people that on this planet that kind of feel like they don't fit in, that alcohol created a spiritual experience that made people fit, made them fit. And it's interesting because if you think about liquor, they call it spirits.
Right.
Right? Spirits and spirituality. So there's a relationship between the spiritual world and what alcohol does for some of us. You hear people tell stories that, they think they're funnier, they're more handsome, they're a little bit taller when they drink.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it just made me feel connected, bro. Like I just felt like I was, and so that culture, I grew up in a drug culture. So the music I listened to, the people I hung out with, the people I idolized, not only was it drugs and alcohol, but it was a criminal culture as well. So there was this undercurrent of like, drugs and secrecy. The other reason I wanted to mention that being dishonest is that I feel like not telling people what was happening and what I was experiencing and how I was feeling as a child, scared, not knowing what to do. You'll hear in recovery that you're only as sick as your secrets. So as a young kid, I feel like that's where my spiritual malady started to develop, that I'm separate, I'm different, I'm alone, I'm afraid, and I can't tell anybody about it because I know what's happening here isn't safe and it's not right, but I also don't know what to do about it. And so that theme was kind of the theme of my life. So there was two sides of me. There was this athlete, there was this kid that had just an enormous amount of potential, right? I was cursed with the gift of potential, right? And so, every school that I went to, every coach that I had, every family member that knew me or my friends' families, they would always say, and you got so much potential. Yeah, so much potential. And but I could never fill it. I could never follow through with it. And so that thing carried me all the way through my adolescence. I got in trouble in high school. I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. There was this transition in my life from basketball and sports and trying to hold it together to where I went from hanging around the wrong crowd to becoming the wrong crowd. If you know what I'm saying. And that's when the criminal element started coming around, right? And that's when, I was going out, I was selling drugs, I was being a part of that community. And I'd always have one foot in and one foot out, right? There would be like my real hardcore criminal friends that were like straight up about it, and I'd be with them, but I wasn't about it like that, right? And then there was like the people that were doing good, like my cousin, they were going to college and they were actually succeeding. And I was in that world a little bit too, but I wasn't going to college. Like I wasn't doing that. So again, I'm in this separate place, just not fully committed to anything. And, that lifestyle carried me a long ways. I came out to Hawaii to run away from my problems, legal problems. I had a warrant for my arrest in Hawaii for 6 years from Oregon. You know what I mean? And I, I thought I'd get away from that criminal lifestyle. And the drugs and the alcohol, and mostly my family, I thought they were the problem. And it turns out that they have drugs and alcohol on Maui, man. I can't believe it, Yeah. And so, and I went from hanging out with the street guys over there and the criminals and the players and the pimps. And then I found, the guys doing that on Maui, you know what I mean? The dealers and the hustlers and the partiers. And it's just, who I connected with. And what I believe today is I just connected with other broken people, you know what I'm saying? Other broken souls, other people that were lost, and that was kind of, you want me to take these out?
Oh, no.
Okay, cool. And so that continued to happen to me. And, but again, I always liked to party, you know what I'm saying? So it was never a part of my life where I really felt like I didn't want to drink or use, right? It was like, this is good for me. I enjoyed it. There was nothing I liked more than having a little bit of money, some drugs in my pocket, and being out at a nightclub somewhere with the music and that scene and just the objectification of women and the music and just that whole sleazy vibe was just what I loved. I loved going in and out of the bathrooms and just one night stands. And the thing was I loved that lifestyle, but then there was such an emptiness inside of me, right? That it's like there was always two sides of me. There was like this person that I wanted to be, and then there was this life that I was living, right? And there's a story in the big book of AA about a guy, and he says his whole life he judged himself by his intentions, while the rest of the world judged him by his actions. Yeah, and so in my mind, like if you would have told me back then, like, are you a liar, Nick Terry? Are you a liar? I would have said, no, hell, come on. I'll keep it real. Like I'm keeping it real. Like I pride myself on this image. And in reality, my whole life was a lie. My whole life was a lie. So I went to my first treatment center in 2009 behind a prescription addiction to prescription medications. And that was 2009. And I was still kind of holding it together. I had, my daughter had already been born. I had my daughter's sister, and I was still in a relationship with her mother. And that was when, it became clear that things were a challenge. So I went to treatment in 2009. I got sober in 2014, January. And between that 5-year period of that first treatment and the last treatment, everything had been destroyed, right? So the first treatment I got into, I had nice cars. I had like this nice Lexus. I had a decent job. I always had money. There was this image like I was this top shelf kind of guy, buying people drinks, having drugs around and all this stuff. And then in January of 2014, I was caught shoplifting, so felony theft charges. I was homeless. I was unemployable. I was living like an animal, right? I mean, there was no party left, right? Because drinking and using against your will is not a party. You know what I'm saying? So I'm a daily drug addict. I'm a daily crystal meth addict. I'm a daily opiate addict, and I can't stop. And it doesn't matter. I hadn't seen my daughters for several months. I was riding a bike around. I was staying on people's couches. I was staying up 3, 4, 5, 6 days in a row and just roaming around. And I finally got caught on camera stealing. I like to call it borrowing merchandise that's not mine, and I was also borrowing cars that didn't belong to me, but they call that auto theft, I think is what they call it. So, they caught me on camera, man, and I had this image of myself, like I told you before. In my mind, I was still that guy with the nice car and the money, and those days were so far gone. But in my mind, I was so delusional. I thought I was going to recapture those days of triumphant comeback. I thought, I'll be back in the scene someday and like try to put some deals together. And it was over. It was over. And they caught me on camera over there. I stole a couple watches out of this shop on Front Street, bro. And Lahaina's a small town, and I've been here for so many years. And the lady put my picture on the social media, right? So it's like, does anybody know this asshole, right? And so my phone starts going, people messaging me, hey man, and my daughter's mom, who had blocked me, she called me and she's like, what is wrong with you? And just the shame of that. I'm 33 years old, and my picture's being posted up on, Crime Stoppers on Maui as a thief, right? And so that ended up being what started to become my bottom. It took me about another 10 months to get clean, going in and out of institutions, spent some times in jails, and then I got clean and sober over there on the Big Island, man. So I was facing sentencing, and they allowed me to go to treatment. And so they thought it was a good idea that I get off of Maui. And so I found this treatment program over on the Big Island, man. And I wasn't, it's funny. I wish I could tell you that I was like committed at that point, like, okay, I'm really going to do this. But about 3 weeks into treatment over there, the treatment center I was going to went out of business. And so they said, I signed up for 90 days, and they said, I'm sorry, we only have 30 days for you. And so I was like, oh, here we go. That's fine. Because the courts gave me 90 days for my sentencing, right? And so I'm like, I got 2 months. I can just, I can do a little moving and grooving. And I called my grandma, and I was like, hey, I need to get an apartment on Aliti Drive. I can go to meetings. The treatment center is going out of business. And my sponsor, who is still a good friend of mine today, he's actually coming to town from Kona today. He's going to be over here for a week, but his name's Phil Freed. And he said, hey, Nick, I think you should go into a sober living program out of this treatment since they're closing down. It's up in Holualoa, Mauka. They call it Bridge House. And you know where Bridge House, yeah? It's up in Keauhou, Mauka, Holualoa.
Yeah, like I know where that is, but I never got sober in Hawaii, so I don't know anything. But I know Holualoa, yeah.
Yeah, so I went up there, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm already gonna get my own apartment. Like, I don't have any money now. This is First National Bank of Grandma, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, but in my mind, I'm like, I'm not gonna go to that sober living because it's like a state-funded place with people that aren't so, it was below my standards. Yeah. Now
Right.
keep in mind, homeless, theft charges, facing sentencing, no money. I mean, but it's just, I'm crazy. Yeah. And so I told my sponsor, nah, I'll think about it, but I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to go up there. And so I told my family, like, I can't go up there. And they said, why not? And I said, because they're using crystal meth at the sober living. And it was a lie. Like, it was funny. I was talking to my grandma on the phone because I'm trying to get her to get me the apartment. And I told her that they're using crystal meth up there. And I didn't premeditate that lie, right? It just came off the cuff. And I was even impressed by it. And she turned me down. She said, honey, I don't care what you do. I'm not going to give you a dime. You committed to the 90-day treatment program. And so you better go to that sober living, or maybe a sober living somewhere else, but I'm done with you. And that was the first time she shut me down. And later on that night, I was in the meeting over there. There's a recovery group that meets at the church. It's called Kailua Kona Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And a guy said something that changed my life. He said his whole life he had suffered from self-delusion, and that he would manipulate the outcome of the situation out of fear. And he said he goes, I'd manipulate the outcome of the situation out of fear. And he said, I manipulated everything and everyone until there was nothing left to manipulate. And boom, I couldn't believe it. I had a spiritual moment. I had like an aha moment, and I was like, and I heard something. Now, this is what I figured out. I didn't hear it up here. It's the first time I heard it right here. You see? And so something inside of me said, Nick, you're doing it again, and you can't do it. You can't do it anymore. You see that? Now, I heard in recovery that you have three voices. You have voice in your head, voice in your pants, and voice in your heart. Voice in your head, voice in your pants, voice in your heart. The voice in your head and the voice in your pants are very loud, right? Very loud. Voice in the heart, very quiet. Very quiet. See that? It's very quiet. You can't hear it very often because the head is so loud and the pants are so loud. But I think at that moment, I was finally in a position to where I heard my authentic self. I heard, people talk about the heart and soul, yeah. So it's like you can't do it. So at that moment, I was dead broke, Alika. I mean, it helped that I didn't have any money and I didn't have any other options, right? And grandma shut me down. So, and that's an interesting thing. You look at some of these stories and there's like seconds and inches, right? Like if she would have said, here's that $2,000 for your apartment, right? And a space for you to do, I might not be here talking with you. You know what I mean? So, I went up to the Bridge House. I surrendered. And at that moment, I had an altruistic thought in my mind, and it was a trip because right after I decided to go, I heard that voice from my heart. And then immediately I had this thought, and it was, how can you help the people up at the Bridge House? What can you do to carry some recovery up there? And that's not a message that would have been something that would have been ruminating for me most of the time. Like I'd be thinking, is there girls up there? What kind of food do they have? You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. And this was just more about recovery. And so I told my sponsor at that meeting, if there was a bed up there, I'll take it. And he said, you might just stay sober. He said, you might just stay sober. He goes, everybody I've worked with that has a background like you do, that has a plan for their life, what they think they're going to do, he goes, none of them stay sober. And so that was the first time. So I was at a Y in the road. Now I had been to 4 treatment programs, so this wasn't my first rodeo, but that was the first time there was a Y in the road. And when my mind said I should go left, and I actually took a right. I took what they call contrary action, you see? And then from there, I went doubled down on all the meetings. I had been to meetings before, I had been to treatment before. I had heard all this stuff. This is not, you know what I mean? I was like, this is not new material for me. But I'll tell you, after I had that moment, that shift, things changed for me. Things changed, and I became fully submerged in the recovery process. And, that means something different to everybody else. But what it meant to me was I went to the sober living. I got my sponsor and I worked through the steps with him, and I started trying to help other people, you know what I mean? And so, that's what happened. I worked all 12 of the steps with him. I immediately got into service, started chairing meetings, right there in Kailua Kona. I didn't have much else going on in my life. You know, I was on EBT. I was getting money through the state, through the Department of Human Services as a disability for being a drug addict. So I was getting like $3 something a month, enough to pay for my rent at the sober living and get some cigarettes. And then I had EBT. And, you know, for a guy like me, you know, that thought so highly of myself, right? That I really thought I was a top shelf guy, right? It was the humility that I needed in my life was to have food stamps and to not have a car and to have to get, you know, social assistance. And so that's where, but the crazy part was, is that was the freest I've ever been in my life. You know, I stayed over there in Kona for about 2 years, man. And you know, my entire life's changed. You know, my entire life's changed. And, you know, I got active in recovery, started working in the field of mental health and substance abuse. Like I had mentioned about that treatment center that went out of business, they reopened, they reestablished and reopened. And I was the overnight tech. Is that better?
Okay, I can see you. I lost you for a second.
Yeah, I turned them off.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Is that better? Okay, cool. Yeah. So then they hired me. They hired me as an overnight tech there at the Hawaii Island Recovery. And you know, I started working in the treatment field, man. It was just like, you know, the spirit of the universe or this God thing just put that path in front of me. And my life just started to transform, man. It's like sobriety, recovery, spirituality, and it just became who I was. I was fully immersed in it. And I started to have some freedom, man. And it wasn't just freedom from substance abuse and addiction, but it was freedom from my thinking. It was freedom from that image, that identification of that person that I thought I was for all those times, all those years, that lost, separate, different, and alone little boy. And I was finally, at the age of 34 years old, I started to grow up, man. And, you know, this whole sobriety process is about growing up, showing up, and growing up, right? And I didn't ever know how to do that. And you know, one thing that the 12 steps did for me is it showed me how to be disciplined, and then it also was a mirror. You know, my whole life I blamed all of my choices on my parents, right? The way that I grew up. And you know, at 33 years old, you know, blaming other people for your actions is it's not being able to have accountability was one of my biggest challenges. So, you know, what I was able to do for the first time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You kind of froze though.
Did I lose you?
Okay, there. You're better.
Hey, we're back. That's cool. So anyways, man, yeah, so I grew up. I finally felt like I belonged somewhere, man. Like I told you, with the drugs and the alcohol, it was an artificial means to feel like I belonged somewhere, but I never really felt like I belonged somewhere, even when I was drunk and high. And the recovery community, the 12-step recovery community for me was the first place that I started to feel like I belonged. And then I started helping people. And that was the other thing. Like, I think all the people that I've worked with, all the people that I've sponsored, all the people that I've helped in the treatment world, you know, one of the things that kind of binds us all together is this low self-esteem, you know, this low self-worth, and being of service, helping people, giving people rides to meetings, you know, doing the altruistic thing was what started to make me feel better about myself, which started to make me feel that self-esteem, right? And so that started to change my life. You know, there's 3 relationships in this world that we have, right? There's a relationship with the spiritual world, there's a relationship with ourself, and there's a relationship with other people. And so, you know, the first thing that I really started working on was this relationship with the spiritual world for myself. And you know, the program of recovery did that for me. Then I started to work on myself, loving myself. You know, I always say to people, you know, recovery is not about abstinence, right? Recovery is not about abstinence. Recovery is about learning to love yourself enough to where you don't want to kill yourself with drugs and alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so however you got to do that is how you got to do it, right? That whole story I was telling you about was because I didn't love myself. I didn't know how to love myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so relationship with the spiritual world, relationship with myself based on loving myself, and then relationship with other people, you know, making amends, trying to you know, get reconnected with my daughters and trying to make things right in my family. And that all happened for me, man. That all happened. I mean, you know, I ended up moving back to Maui after I was about 2 years sober. I got the chance to open up Maui Recovery, to where I still work at today. And you know, I told you the story about being homeless and getting caught on camera shoplifting and being in jails and being a daily chronic drug addict. And, you know, I've had my daughter with me full time, full custody for the last 5 years. I own a place here on Maui. I own a home here. I'm engaged to get married. You know, like I mentioned, I helped open up Maui Recovery 5.5 years ago, and now I'm the admissions director there. You know, so I've been helping people out over there for quite a while. And then I started my own company called Breath of Life Recovery recently. The last couple of years, I've been really focusing my life around mindfulness and breath work, and trying to help other people heal. So the first several years of my recovery, I was helping people with substance abuse and addiction challenges, and now I'm still doing that, but I also, with the breath work and the Breath of Life Recovery, we're helping people with trauma, like you mentioned, with trauma, unprocessed grief, anxiety, depression, all of these things that usually underpin our addictions, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the breath work I've found has just taken my recovery to that next plateau and just really expanded my abilities to help more people, you know. And so with COVID hit, you know, a lot of the meetings, people weren't meeting up in person anymore. They were doing a lot of online meetings, which has brought us to this point where, you know, where we're sharing now. So I started to write. Every morning I was doing my breath work, and I started to write this book. And my fiance was like, you know, you should do this coaching program. And she's really encouraging me because she sees how I worked with people in the program. And so I put the book together, and then I started Breath of Life Recovery, started doing coaching with people. And now, man, that's all I do is, you know, I tell my story, but primarily I just coach people on breath work. And shit, man, it's like, you know, my life is so good now. It's like I hit the big lottery. You know what I mean? Like it's that the mega billions one, but it's not money, right? Mm-hmm. It's just that it's what I call spiritual currency, right? And mm-hmm. it's that abundance of purpose, of passion, of creativity, of curiosity. You know, I started doing my hip hop music again. And so with the Breath of Life Recovery is, you know, I do hip hop rap music and more like conscious raps. And we've been going to, you know, these different retreats, and my fiance and I are you know, we love meditation and mindfulness. We just went to we were actually out by you. We were out in Escondido, outside of San Diego. We went to this Deer Park Monastery for like an 8-day meditation course out there. And you know, so we love doing that kind of stuff, man. And so that's really it, man. You know, that's kind of my story in a nutshell, you know? You know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is one of my heroes, you know, and he has a quote, and he says that at some point, every person must decide whether to walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. Mm-hmm. And he said that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing to help others? You know, what are you doing to help others? And you know, the foundation of my life, where I learned that creative altruism was in the 12-step program, right? Mm-hmm. And but today, and I still love the 12 steps, but you know, I've found that we need more recovery. You know, we need more avenues for people. You know, one thing that a lot of people report to me that come into our treatment programs is that they just it doesn't vibe for them. They don't like it, right? They don't want to be a part of it. And it's like, I get it, I understand. You know, but like what you're doing, Alika, right here, right?
that's all those people that started AA did 90 years ago.
Yeah,
They just
right.
started something, right? Two people talking, make a community. And so for me, that's where I'm at. I was like, okay, like, how can I try to create another avenue for people? Or how can I try to create another space where people can feel comfortable, feel less anxious, feel less depressed, and create a shift, just a
Uh-huh.
shift, you know. And so that's what my life purpose has been about. And I'm really grateful that you asked me to come share here. And I really just wanted to say thanks for creating the space, because it takes courage to do this, but once you do it, people gravitate towards it, right?
Hmm.
People want to be able to come to spaces like this, and so I really just wanted to give you a lot of props for that, man, because it takes courage, and I really admire that. So thanks a lot.
Yeah. Well, right on, bro. Thank you so much. Man, I can relate. Man, our stories is so identical. It's crazy. I
Mm,
was listening to you and just like the a lot of different things, pretty much everything. But I wrote some stuff down that you talked about. But this last thing you just talked about the breath work, doing all of that things, like outside of maybe 12 step. Like for me too, I'm a 12 stepper, and that's the foundation I really built my life on. However, my sponsor did not teach me how to manage my money, or he did not
yeah,
teach me how to have a successful
yeah,
marriage, like things like that, other things, or even like different kind of traumas and things like that. People go to therapy for those things. Some people, they get all of that stuff in 12 steps, which is great too. you know
yeah,
um so I get it, I understand it. I think that's a really, really positive and something I support 100%, because in my 12-step program I learned about these three indispensables: honesty, willingness, and open-mindedness. That last one, open-mindedness, I learned that there, and I applied it in my life in general. So it wasn't until I became a counselor to where my mind really opened up more, because working in treatment, and like you hear all these things, and all these like traumas and pains, and molestation, and I got raped and I was abused, and so much traumas. Like, I mean, absolutely, the 12 steps guarantee, if you apply it, will help you. In my opinion, it is impossible for somebody to go through it with an open mind, being honest and willing, and then nothing happens. That is virtually impossible. But like, what you're doing, I'm a big, big supporter of that kind of stuff, because
yeah,
people may need help. In, like my friend Jim, he was commenting earlier about the breath work. He does that. He knows about that as something really good. Me personally, I don't know anything about it, to be honest, but my mind is open to it. See, prior to recovery,
yeah,
don't tell me about that. I know how to breathe. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like things like that. I was just very closed-minded.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
um, but
yeah,
you talked about this one, and it's I think it was one of the stories in the back of the book, the big book, because I was very similar. But I would judge myself by my intentions, then I would judge other people by their actions. Like, I wouldn't have did that to my wife. I wouldn't have did that. I would have did that. You know what I mean? But like, I was doing all that stuff. But it's crazy. It's just
yeah,
nuts. And I like this, what you had to say. Oh, this is one of my favorite. I've never heard this before, because using drugs, drinking, it's a huge part. It's a big part. I had a lot of fun. It wasn't all just pain. I had a lot of fun in the beginning, but
yeah,
wasn't very long to where, like you said, drinking and using against your will is not a party. Like, I got to that place super
yeah,
fast, real fast. Like a couple years into it, I'm chasing the very first high I got. The first time I did drugs was down in Waipio Valley at a party, and I was trying to chase that first high for 20 years. I tried to do that, and it wasn't working. um this is like, that's so similar. Like, so the manipulation, oh bro, I had a PhD in manipulation. Like, I get that, I understand that. And like that story you told about the guy in the meeting in Kona, about like what he said and how the light bulb clicked. Like, I mean, in the beginning of my journey in recovery, working steps, getting to know myself, I had to swallow some huge chunks of truth about me. That's how I learned, because I learned how to be honest first, and then I learned about my selfish nature, the manipulation. I would manipulate you for anything. It didn't even matter. Drugs and alcohol don't even got to be involved. And then, just like you, I tried. I didn't go through treatment. I was in California when I got sober. So I applied for like the Covered California free medical insurance, and I would call places for beds. You guys get no, call tomorrow, call tomorrow. And I was like, man, I don't know, I don't trust myself. What am I gonna do? So I decided to look up 12-step meetings, and I found one, and the lady there, she knew a guy, one of her friends managed a sober living in the next town over that I was in. So I went into sober living. I was there for my first year, and in the 12-step program, and that's how I stayed sober. But the sober living, you know, it was a blessing for me. To be honest, it did not have a whole lot of structure at all, but I was ready though. I mean, people was doing drugs, people was relapsing left and right in that place. But you know, I mean, I understood, like, because I was honest. I got to see my truth. I didn't like what I seen. I had opportunities to change it and make adjustments. And I made a decision that, look, that's what I want to do. You know, it was real obvious. Like, these guys, their doors are closed, but you can hear them in the room. You know, it's so obvious. You know, they do drugs in there, and then this is a huge one. So I used to have a lot of money too. I was traveling all over the world, you know, hotel rooms, and you know, this is the craziest, the most insane, like the insanity of it. I had money to pay my bills. I just chose not to. I'm like, now something could come up to where I don't need a bunch of money to go somewhere or do this or buy drugs. And, you know, it was insane. But because I had so much, ego was big. The pride was huge. I had zero ounce of humility in me. So God had to teach me. So I was you know, entrepreneur for a long time, and I built it to a point where it wasn't a ton of money though, but to a point where even if I wasn't there, I was making money. I had to, you know, recruit people, get them licensed, teach them what to do, how to close, and do the presentation. So any business they wrote, I get paid too. And on top of that, I write on my own pen. I make money. So I had a very arrogant attitude. So I get to California now, like you, no money, no nothing, no car, no. I lost my sanity. Everything is gone. I have absolutely nothing, and so I'm going to the sober living, but I gotta pay for it. So I went to Chevron to put gas, and then they had a bunch of, like, I don't know what was going on there. I was like, what is this? Like, they had like tents set up and tables, and so I just said hi, and oh, it was like a hiring thing. So keep in mind, like, I'm not there, I'm making money, I'm traveling the world, I'm doing all these things, I got a ton of money. Two, now I'm working at Chevron now. That was literally the next employment I had. And you know, cleaning toilets, restocking shelves, the cooler, checking people out. You know, that is exactly what I needed. So much humility was involved in that, you know. And the last thing that I wrote down, you talked about that, because I was just like you, same thing. I started drinking and using because I wanted to be one of the boys. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be part of. I wanted to connect. I wanted to belong. And it's that artificial, I don't know how you put it. It's like artificial though. You know, it's not real. You know what I mean? And I was so delusional. I didn't care. I think even if I did know that back then, I still would have did it. Because, you know, it's very kind of cliche-ish to say, but the truth was, I wasn't comfortable with me because everybody I was around were all extroverts. All my cousins, all my older cousins, everybody. But I was an introvert. So they didn't need drugs and alcohol to be social, but I did, you know, and you know, I went on a 20-year run, and I didn't die. I didn't kill anybody else. I did a lot of damage to other people though. Oh yeah, I did. And I'm aware of them, and you know, I still have some amends to make back home in Hawaii. All the amends here, I made them. But the majority of the rest of them actually is back home in Hawaii. So okay, sorry, bro, you got me going. I wrote a bunch of stuff down.
That's good.
So
That's
I'm
good.
gonna ask you some questions. The first one is okay. So the name of your book and coaching program is called Breath of Life Recovery. So how did that come about, and where did the name come from?
Oh yeah. So the word aloha, as many people know, some people might not know, it roughly translates into the breath of life, or the breath of God, right? So alo is the embodiment of life, or the embodiment of God, and then the ha is the breath. So, you know, when natives touch each other's foreheads and they exchange the ha, you know, breath of life, right? And so that exchange is also consistent with the Native American culture. You know, it's those, they touch the forehead and share the breath as well. And So the breath of life, and then recovery, most people know, but the definition is to regain something that's been lost or stolen. Yeah. So breath of life to help regain something that's been lost or stolen. And so if you think about things that have been lost and stolen from people that have had childhoods that are traumatic, that have had, alcoholic parents or abusive environments, we lose a lot. And so in around to recovery is really recovering the essence of who we are, right? The joy, the creativity, the curiosity, the confidence, the courage, all of those things is what the breath of life can do just by utilizing the breath. And, it's interesting. I started to study this stuff and read up about it about a little over 2 years ago. And, there's all throughout the world, fascinating. So if you look back 3,000 or 4,000 years ago in China and in India, breath work, they call it Qigong, which was the foundation of the medical society in China. It's this essential vital life force that you can regulate through your breath, right? And in India they call it pranayama, right? So it's the same thing. In Japan it's called a kiraki, but it's synonymous, just like the aloha spirit, and just like in the native cultures, right. It's this idea of breathing, connecting mind, body, and spirit. And if you look in history, like in ancient Greek, they call it pneuma. Now, pneuma means breath, soul, and spirit. It's a synonymous meaning, right? And if you look in the Hebrew language, the word ruah means breath, soul, and spirit, right? And so all throughout history, all throughout the world, there's been this synonymous piece to God, spirit, breath, and soul, right? In the Buddhist culture, they say felt oneness is this vital breath that connects mind, body, and spirit. Yeah. So if the goal in a 12-step recovery community or in a sobriety community is they talk about spiritual experience, you hear people talk about psychic shift, you hear people talk about conscious contact. If you want to shift your consciousness, if you want to shift biochemically, spirit and mind, deep breath work practice can get you there very quickly. And so I started reading this stuff and I was fascinated by it. They did a study at Stanford Research Institute by Emma Sapella, who is a Stanford scholar, and she's also a yoga instructor. And they took PTSD war veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they put them through a 9-week yoga and breathwork course. And these guys had some pretty severe symptoms from war, right? Can't sleep, anxiety, depression, substance abuse. And they were healed by this 9-week course. And they reported that primarily it was the breath work that was the most impactful. And they checked back a year later, and the people that continued the practice, the symptoms did not return. You see? And I thought, wow. And I'm already breathing, right? I'm already doing the breathing. I'm like, really? Because I know trauma and unprocessed grief is what underpins addiction, right? And so I was like, wow. And so that's when I started to think about, number one, I got to practice it myself. Number two, now I'm going to start just like AA. We got to start sharing it with others, right? We got to start trying to help other people. Yeah. And people have been gravitating towards it, right? They're like, what's up with the breath work? Can we get together and breathe? And they're showing me different breath work practices, you know what I mean? And everybody's just like, because you're oxygenating your system, right? You're shifting, you're changing, right? And that's, I've been like, wow, okay, this is dope. And now it's just become a part of who I am. And so that's where the Breath of Life Recovery name came from, and the book and the idea from the book. My fiance has been such a motivational vehicle behind this movement, because she's seen something in me that I just hadn't quite seen in myself, and it's this gift, these gifts and talents that we have. But that fear brings us back to, I can't write a book. Alika, I'm drop out 10th grade.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody wants to hear it, but then you write it and people are like, wow, that's amazing. Like, you share your story and they're like, are you a public speaker? Are you a doctor? That's what people ask me. And I'm like, nah, man. But that's the gifts and talents that I have. But sometimes other people see it in you and you still think you're that lost kid underneath there, And so she's been so important in helping me see the gifts and talents that I know I've had, that potential that I talked about all my life. And so now, because of recovery and this breath work, I'm actually able to start seeing what that looks like to really become the authentic person that you were meant to be. Now, here's the thing about breath work. Breath work doesn't change your life. Breath work allows you to become who you're supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't change who you are necessarily, but it allows you to become the authentic person that you're supposed to be. That's what I've experienced so far.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, bro, because we're running short on time. I'm gonna
Yes, sir.
ask you these next two questions like back to back because it's almost the same. So so what's the best part about 12-step community, and then the worst part?
Okay, best part is the people, and the worst part is the people. But it is. The people is the best part, right?
Yeah.
So having a community of people is the best thing. You know, the steps allow you, again, to address spiritual, address self, and address others. That's all in the 12 steps.
Yeah.
And I love the community. The biggest problem, in my view, is the identification piece, right? This idea that you have to identify as something can be very harmful for people. And that's what people report to me. They say, man, you know, Nick, I don't want to say I'm an addict for the rest of my life. I don't want to say I'm an alcoholic for the rest of my life, you know? And I think identification for some people can be good, just like the word God, right, can be good. But for some people, it can be harmful. So the question is it more harmful or is it more helpful for you?
Yeah.
In trying to follow that goal of becoming a sober person. And so for me, I think identification can be the root of a lot of people's suffering, you know? And so I like to have places where people can come and just be whoever they want to be. They don't have to identify as a certain thing. And so that's the one thing about the breath work is like Breath of Life Recovery. It's a program, it's a community, but it's also something that can maybe help people stay tethered, right? To help people to, you know, whatever recovery group that they're a part of. So.
All right, bro. That's cool. We're gonna talk more about that later. I'll call you up. Okay, the next question is, how has your sobriety affected your family?
Say it again.
Uh-oh, did you hear me? Okay. How has your sobriety affected your family?
Oh man, wow, yeah. Phew. You know, I think that my recovery, as far as my daughters, I think they probably has benefited them more than anything. You know, being a father and showing up, and that's what happened to me with recovery. When I didn't know it, when I was in Kona for those 2 years, I was learning how to be a mature, responsible father. I didn't know it. I'm helping people in AA. I'm taking people to meetings. I'm showing up for other people. I'm being selfless instead of self-centered and self-pity and self-ish. And I started to learn how to care about other people. And then when I got back to Maui, I ended up having my daughter full-time, 7 days a week. And it was like the universe was like, see, that's what we were doing. We were training you to be a father. And so, you know, sobriety has allowed me to be an honest, accountable figure in the people that I love the most lives, in particular my daughters.
Right on. Okay, bro. So the last question is, basically, what would you say to encourage the newcomer or somebody trying to get sober right now?
Yeah. You know what I would tell somebody that's new is I would say surrender. Surrender would be what I would say. And what does that mean? So surrender means to, in my opinion, it means to take contrary action. You know, one thing that I deal with a lot of people in early recovery, a lot of people in treatment, you know, and I look at my life and I got a lot of good things going on. You know, I'm a homeowner, I'm getting married, I'm got my kids in my life, I got business stuff happening. And you know, what's interesting is one thing that these brand new people don't ask very often is they don't say, hey, what do you think I should do? You know, so if you're somebody that's new, that's just getting into recovery, and you really, really want to stay clean and sober, and you really want to change your life, I would recommend going up to some people that have some things happening in their life, that have some relationships that are working, that seem to be living by these universal principles, and ask them what they're doing. And then share with them about your life and ask them what they think you should do. You see that?
That's a good one.
Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do it, but just ask. Like, take 4 or 5 people, you know, Alika, Nick, maybe another counselor, another sober guy from the AA meetings, whatever, somebody that you respect, and tell them, and then see what they say. Because what I noticed is that the plans and designs I had for my life were not what was going to be best for me. And I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't aware of it because it was self-delusion. I wasn't conscious of it. So if you ask some other people, and it's like all of a sudden you might be able to see a theme there. And my other thing would be to do everything you can, any practice that you can do that brings you into the present moment and that can turn your head down a little bit, just to turn down the volume of the rumination station that's always going, and see if we can travel down here to the heart. And that, if you can start to operate from that space, then when people are saying things, and people like Alika or people in the meetings are saying things, you can actually hear it.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Ooh, right on, bro. Well, hey, thank you so much, man. I learned a lot just by listening to you, you know. So I'm sure, you know, the viewers, everybody, because I will post this, everybody that goes on to watch it later will definitely benefit from it. Absolutely, bro. So, you know, I thank you so much. You know, we'll do this again, bro. Don't worry. I'll be in Hawaii next month, you know.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it.
Next time,
I can't wait.
We're going to be in the same box, you know.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, bro. I appreciate you. And I'll keep in touch, though.
Keep in touch. Let me know how I can help, and I look forward to collaborating with you soon, man.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, bro. Thank you so much.
All right, Bob. Take care.
Okay, bro.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, sorry, guys. So, anyway, that was Nick's story. Amazing, amazing, amazing. He's in Maui. You know, I'm from the Big Island, so I'll be back home next month. I'll probably hook up with him. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys really got something from that. I sure did. I mean, that was great. I love that one. So, again, if you guys have a story to tell, please reach out to me, and we can make it happen. I created this platform almost 1 year ago to, you know, have people come on, share their story, and spread hope. Spread hope. The world needs hope more than ever today. So, thank you guys so much. Appreciate all you guys. Take care. I'm going live again in 2 hours at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're in Hawaii, that's 12 o'clock. Lunchtime. Okay. See you guys. Bye-bye.